Well, we're back at it with a myriad of small projects in this episode, and to kick it off, we're going to start with some interior furring strips on the ceiling. For the ceiling, we're going with full 2x4s. That gives us a 3-inch cavity to fill with foam. We're using the same wood to metal self-drilling screws that we used when we boxed in the wheel wells. In one of the previous episodes, we ran out of foam at the rear end of the rig there, so we're going to put these middle furring strips up and call it quits until we get that first layer of foam on the rest of the rear. The spray foam we're using has approximate R value of 7 per inch. So with that 3-inch cavity on the ceiling, we'll have a total of 21. In addition, with the furring strips the way they are, the next layer of foam will completely encapsulate those aluminum ceiling members, giving us a much more complete thermal break. On to some plumbing. We finally received the gas line that goes from the tank selector / pressure regulator over to the gas line that we ran to the furnace last week. In the last episode, we had talked about running the power cable next to the gas line into the propane locker. I'm not sure what happened to that footage, but here you can see the wire gland has been installed next to the bulkhead gas line fitting. Both ends of this gas line are brass flare fittings, so no need for any of the thread schmoo on these connections. Then it's time for the novelty size crescent wrench, just to help take some of the load off of this fitting and the bulkhead fitting as we tighten. Before we put the tanks back in, let's go ahead and get that power line run. We're using 10-2 stranded for RV use or high vibration applications. Eventually, this will be feeding a 30 amp single phase panel, but until then, I'm just going to put an outlet extension fitting on there so we can get power into the rig. First step is to remove the 30 amp RV inlet. Then we're up to every electrical guy's favorite, stripping. There's a little gauge on the side of the connector that allows us and helps us to get the right amount of copper exposed. We'll get them all clamped down and we're ready to reassemble the connector. Now there is a rubber gasket on the connector, but with the aluminum tread bright, it doesn't fully conform and seal. So I did decide to add some sealant around the perimeter of the connector. Once affixed, we'll do a quick test fit with the 15 amp RV adapter. Then we head back inside the propane locker and finish up the electrical with a quick wire clamp. Now that that's completed, let's get the tanks back in, the regulator connected, and finish this job up. All right, well, it looks like we're all wrapped up here in the propane locker. Now, on to FurFest. Being new to furring, I'm going to do as best as I can here, cranking this out. But I did sign up for FurCon Midwest next month, where they're going to show and detail the latest in furring technologies, procedures, and materials. I'm excited to attend. On the walls, we'll be using 1x material instead of the 2x we used on the ceiling. This will give us a little less R value, but we'll still have a nice thermal break covering every one of those exposed aluminum studs. Now I do need to remove some foam here to get flush against these, so that's what I'm doing there, is removing foam. We'll also need some vertical runs here to box in the windows, go around the perimeter of the door, and of course the rear ramp. Getting in all these screws and getting these furring strips on the side, I was amazed at how much more rigid the wall became. I'm not using a level at all. It's not critical that these be perfectly level, so I align them with the window, and close is good enough for furring strips. Time to move up into the V. This should go a little quicker. Nice, short, clean runs. Now we've been talking, going back and forth, trying to figure out what we want to use for wall coverings on the interior here. And I think we're gonna kind of do a combination of 1/4-inch tongue and groove cedar. It's nice and light. We'd finish that with a tongue oil. And the other surfaces, we're thinking about doing some 1/2-inch foam covered with RV carpet for weight, and also some 1/4-inch plywood covered with RV carpet on some of the other surface. So we'll see where that kind of pans out as we progress in the project. All right, I think that's about all the farther we're gonna get in this episode. So until next time, thanks much for watching.